Hello, students. Assalamu alaikum. Today we are going to start the new chapter that is about biodiversity. Let's start the chapter. Biology is the study of living organisms. The similarity among living organisms is that they share all the characteristics of life. That is movement, respiration, sensitivity, nutrition, excretion, reproduction, and growth. At the same time, these living things differ from one another and their variety is enormous. Biodiversity refers to the variety of life on Earth. It includes different species, ecosystem, and genetic variations. Understanding biodiversity is crucial for ecological balance. Let's talk about the importance of biodiversity. Biodiversity contributes to the ecological stability. It provides resources for food, medicines, and materials. Healthy ecosystems support human life and well being. Components of biodiversity are species diversity, that is, variety of species in a habitat, genetic diversity, that is, variation within species, and ecosystem diversity, which is different ecosystem in a region. Let's talk about the ecological importance of biodiversity. Biodiversity supports ecosystem services like pollination and nutrient cycling. It helps in maintaining soil fertility and water quality. Diverse ecosystems are more resilient to changes. Now we will see the economic importance of biodiversity. Biodiversity provides raw materials for industries. It supports agriculture, fisheries, and tourism. Sustainable use of biodiversity can lead to economic growth. Now we will see the threats to biodiversity. Habitat destruction due to urbanization and agriculture is a threat to biodiversity. Pollution and climate change impact ecosystems, and overexploitation of resources leads to species extinction. The next topic of this chapter is classification. Classification is basically the grouping of related facts into the classes. It is process which brings together like things and separates unlike things. So, in biology, biologists have devised way of grouping organisms. The grouping of organism is called the classification. So it's a process of grouping organisms based on their similarities and differences. It helps in organizing the biological diversity. To understand the classification in biology, we must have the understanding of taxonomy. Taxonomy is the branch of biology that deals with the identification, naming, and classification of organisms. It helps in understanding the diversity of life. While the scientific study of diversity of organisms and their evolutionary relationships is called systematics, it helps in understanding how species evolve over time. Let's have a look on the aims and objectives of classification. Classification helps us to determine similarities and differences between organisms. It also helps to arrange the organisms on the basis of their similarities and differences. It also helps us to identify the organism, to study them systematically, and to find out evolutionary relationship among organisms. If we will look at the history of classification, we will come to know that the Greek philosopher Aristotle was the first person who classified the living organism. In 700s, Abu Usman al-Jahiz described 350 species of animals. In the end of 15th century, many biologists have worked on classification methods. Andreas Cisalpino was a scientist who divided plants into 15 groups and called them genera, while the John Gray was a scientist who published important works on the classification of plants. Tournefort introduced the taxa of class and species, and Corliss Linnaeus grouped the species according to the similar physical characteristics. Two-kingdom classification system is the oldest system and classifies organisms into two kingdoms, that is, kingdom Plantae and kingdom Animalia. It was first proposed by the Carolus Linnaeus. In two-kingdom classification system, Plantae was a kingdom which includes all the autotrophs in it. But the bacteria, fungi, and algae were also placed in this kingdom. While the organisms which depend on autotrophs or other heterotrophs are included in the kingdom Animalia. So, in two-kingdom classification system, the characteristics of kingdom Plantae are that they are multicellular and autotrophic, having the cell walls made up of cellulose, and they can perform photosynthesis. They are mostly stationary, means they are non-motile, and growth is indefinite. Now, if we will see the characteristics of Animalia, they are also multicellular but are heterotrophic, having no cell wall and cannot perform photosynthesis. Mostly they are motile and growth is limited. But there are some limitations or drawbacks of two kingdom classification system that are no separation of prokaryotes or eukaryotes. For example, bacteria classified with plants, fungi wrongly placed under plants despite being heterotrophic, and the protist and unicellular organisms were ignored. More drawbacks of two-kingdom classification system are that they lack clarity for microscopic organisms like Euglena that shows both plant and animal-like features. It doesn't reflect evolutionary relationships as well. Three-kingdom classification system came to solve the problems of two-kingdom classification system and was proposed by Ernst Haeckel in 1866. It added one more kingdom along with the Plantae and Animalia, and that was the kingdom Protista. The characteristics of kingdom Plantae in three-kingdom classification system were that they were mostly the multicellular and autotrophic, means they could synthesize their own food by the process of photosynthesis, and they had the cell wall made up of cellulose. The organisms in the kingdom Animalia of three kingdom classification system were also multicellular, but they were heterotrophic, means they could not prepare their own food and they had no cell wall. In Kingdom Protista, mostly the organisms were unicellular, but some were also multicellular eukaryotic, including algae, protozoa, and slime molds. Some were autotrophic and some were heterotrophic in that kingdom. There were also so many drawbacks in three kingdom classification system, such as prokaryotes like bacteria were still not separated and were placed under the protista. Diverse organisms, despite of their differences, were placed in the same group. Fungi was still grouped with plants or protists and was not recognized as a separate kingdom. It lacked clarity in evolutionary lineage and molecular characteristics. These all problems were solved by the five kingdom classification system, which was proposed by Robert Whittaker in 1969. Five kingdom classification system includes kingdoms named Monera, Protista, Fungi, Plantae, and Animalia. In five kingdom classification system, the organisms were classified on the basis of their cell type, cellular organization, and mode of nutrition. So let's see the characteristics of these kingdoms. Kingdom Monera. The organisms were unicellular prokaryotic and the mode of nutrition in them were either autotrophic or heterotrophic. Examples are bacteria and cyanobacteria. Kingdom Protista. The organisms are mostly unicellular in Kingdom Protista. Some are also multicellular, but simple multicellular, having the eukaryotic cell either autotrophic or heterotrophic mode of nutrition, for example, amoeba, paramecium, or algae. In Kingdom Fungi, mostly the organisms are multicellular, eukaryotic, and they had a different mode of nutrition, which is called as absorptive mode of nutrition, and the organisms are called as saprophytic. Saprophytic or saprotrophs means they absorb the by decomposing the dead organisms. For example, mushrooms and yeast. In Kingdom Plantae, the organisms are eukaryotic, multicellular, and autotrophics, means they can synthesize their own food by the process of photosynthesis, for example, ferns, mango tree, etc. In Kingdom Animalia, mostly the organisms are eukaryotic, multicellular, and heterotrophic, means they cannot prepare their own food and utilize the food by prepared by the autotrophs or take the food from other heterotrophs, for example, humans and lions. In five kingdom classification system, the archaea and bacteria were combined in the single kingdom Monera because they shared the prokaryotic form of cell structure, but they are fundamentally different. So this classification system had no distinction based on molecular data, that is DNA or RNA. I hope the concept explained in this video is clear to you. In the next part of this chapter, we will read the three domain system of classification. Let me know in the comments if you have any question. I hope the concept was clear. Like the video and subscribe the channel for more videos.